A very good morning. We at Symbiosis College of Arts and Commerce cordially welcome you back to the last day of Deeksharambh-Student Induction Program organized under the UGC Guidelines. We are thankful to our dynamic principal, Dr. Rishikesh Soman sir, extremely supportive Vice Principal, Dr. Tessie Thadatil ma'am, and Dr. Sharayu Bhakare ma'am in charge Deeksharambh for always supporting and guiding us. We hope you have got a snapshot of the programs that college has to offer over the week-long student induction program, and that the talks given by all the experts and teachers was an enriching experience for you. After yesterday's session, which gave you an insight into the workings of the placement cell and college library, followed by the engaging and thought-provoking talk on managing peer pressure, I am sure you are all eager to dive into today's session. Today, we're very fortunate to have Dr. Girija Mahale, the head of Symbiosis Center of Emotional Wellbeing, who will be giving a talk on gender sensitization. Dr. Girija Mahale is a psychiatrist by profession and the head of the Symbiosis Center for Emotional Wellbeing at the Symbiosis International University. She leads a team of psychological counselors at the center. Dr. Mahale specializes in youth mental health and has conducted numerous workshops such as how to improve your EQ, foster relationships, gender and sexuality, among others. She is extremely passionate about her work and also enjoys dancing, singing, and traveling. It is indeed our pleasure to have you with us today, ma'am. I request you to kindly begin your session.
Thank you so much, Pooja ma'am, for the warm introduction. I thank Soman sir for inviting me for this session, and I welcome all the students who have joined here today for the last day of the induction program. I'll just share my screen for the presentation. Okay, I hope that my PowerPoint is visible and yes, I'm audible as well.
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. So the topic for today is gender sensitization. And I know I'm not being able to interact with you, but it's a very intriguing topic and it's very closely related to mental health. So what I'm going to do is firstly clear concepts around the differences between gender and sex, and for which I'm going to show you a small video, so that all the terminologies that I'm sure the students must be familiar with, you'll properly understand whether it talks about gender, whether what denotes sex, what denotes sexual orientation, what do you mean by sexual identity, is romantic orientation separate from sexual orientation, because you are at an age group where your sexuality is evolving, you're at an age group where romantic relationships are likely to happen, and therefore it's extremely important that you understand these concepts very clearly. So moving on, I will just play this video.
Hey everyone, welcome to this super neat introduction to some concepts within the LGBT community. There are so many buzzwords, vocabulary, and definitions floating around in the media, it can be hard to dissect what it all means. So this brief video will introduce you to some basic concepts. Okay, there's a lot to get through. First, the LGBTQ+ acronym. Let's break that down. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, ally. Now, all of these words deal with one of 4 key traits every person, queer or not, has. Biological sex is the physical anatomy with which you were born. Gender identity is the personal feeling and conceptualization of one's own gender on the spectrum between male and female. Sexual orientation is the gender to which a person is attracted, either romantically or sexually, in relation to their own. Gender expression is how a person chooses to outwardly show their gender identity. In simple terms, biological sex, what you have, gender identity, what you feel, sexual orientation, who you love, gender expression, how you look and act. Okay, we just broke down the acronym and we talked about the 4 traits. Now let's put them together. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and asexual refer to sexual orientation. Intersex refers to differences in biological sex, which can also be related to being transgender, and both of those are related to gender identity. Queer is an umbrella term used by most of the community to refer to anyone who identifies as part of the community. Questioning refers to people who are, you guessed it, still questioning their sexuality or gender. Allies are non-queer folk who support and love the queer community. Now, the first idea to talk about is that of a spectrum. The LGBTQ+ community widely accepts that the four aforementioned traits are all on a spectrum, a scale between two opposite points. Traits can fall on either extreme or anywhere in between. All right, let's jump in and start with terms relating to gender identity. First, biological sex. The extremes on this spectrum are biological male and female. These are determined mainly by hormones and organs. For males, this means testosterone, a penis, testes, and secondary sex characteristics like body and facial hair and a lower voice. For females, this means estrogen, a vagina, and the internal reproductive organs for pregnancy. Female secondary sex characteristics include breasts, wider hips, and a higher voice. Intersex is the term used to describe people whose combination of hormones, internal sex organs, and genitals do not fit typical binary notions of male or female bodies. Gender, another spectrum, is the scale between boy and girl. Boys may use masculine pronouns, he, him, his, and feel masculine. Girls use she, her pronouns and feel feminine. Anyone who identifies outside the gender binary falls under the umbrella term of genderqueer. Halfway between the extremes is gender neutral. This means someone who identifies as neither a man nor a woman. They often choose neutral pronouns, they, them, their, or a variation of the invented pronouns z, zer, z. Someone who is gender fluid may identify differently at different times. A bigender person lives their life at both extremes at different times, living both as a man and as a woman. With both gender fluid and bigender people, it is important to listen and respect the appropriate pronoun for the situation. Agender people don't identify with any gender and often use gender-neutral pronouns. So, we already established that gender identity is the gender you feel inside. When your internal gender identity matches your born biological sex, that's called cisgender. If they don't match, transgender. Transgender people experience gender dysphoria, or the uncomfortable feeling that their mind and body don't match. Often, trans people will choose to transition, using hormone replacement therapy and/or various surgeries to change their bodies to match their identity. It is never okay to ask a trans person where they are in their transition. If they want you to know, they'll tell you. Mind-body alignment also lies on a spectrum. Gender expression is how people choose to show their gender to the outside world. This refers to the ways in which we each manifest masculinity or femininity. It is usually an extension of gender identity. Each of us expresses a particular gender every day, the clothes we wear, how we style our hair, or even the way we stand. Drag kings and queens are people who explore gender as an art form. Their cross-dressing is a form of gender expression, but you cannot assume anything about their gender identity or sexual orientation based on how they choose to dress. Speaking of sexual orientation, that's our last spectrum, and it refers to whom you are attracted. On one end, we have heterosexual, or attraction to someone of the opposite gender. Opposingly, there is homosexual, or attraction to the same gender. In between is bisexual, attraction to both genders. Pansexuality is attraction to all genders, including those that lay outside the binary. Someone who is asexual is not attracted to any gender. Attraction can be broken down even further into both romantic and sexual. One is an emotional attraction, the other is physical. These attractions do not always have to align. For example, someone can be panromantic, emotionally attracted to all genders, but asexual, not physically attracted to any gender. There are several other, more nuanced prefixes. Demi, scolio, poly, to name a few. Other genders such as third gender and two-spirit also exist. Some of these identities can be confusing and hard to understand if you've never been exposed to them before. But if a person defines themselves in a way that is new to you, it is okay, even important, to respectfully ask what that identity means to them. These are just a few of some offensive and hurtful terms that are used to describe some people in the LGBT community. These terms are mostly old-fashioned and are often used out of ignorance rather than malice. However, they can't all be slurs used maliciously on purpose to hurt people's feelings. But the biggest message you should take away from this video is the importance of letting someone define their own gender and sexuality. Respect their pronouns, respect their chosen name, respect their appearance, and respect their choice in partners. Share this video on your favorite social media platform and spread the word. Hey everyone, welcome to this super neat introduction to some concepts within the LGBT community.
Okay. All right, so I hope that the terminologies are clear, isn't it? There are too many and it might be difficult to grasp, but the bottom line is that do not assume anything, and it's always better to ask the person what they would prefer them to be called, what pronoun they would like themselves to use. And what is, instead of assuming anything about their sexual orientation, it's always better to ask and clarify, right? So the basic difference between sex and gender is sex lies between the legs. That is, at birth, if a child is born with a penis, it's a male. If a baby is born with a vagina, it's a female. And sex is also determined by the chromosomes, hormones, and physiological secondary sexual characteristics. So a male will have beard or a hair growing in certain parts of the body, as well as voice will be different, as well as in females there will be the growth of breasts, hips will be wide, and pitch will be higher as compared to boys. So this is what sex differences is. When it comes to gender, gender is completely a socio-cultural construct, which means what society and what different cultures have assigned certain roles to males and females right from birth. So you might have heard that when babies, so in Western India or Western world, sorry, when boy child is born, then, or a male child is born, then usually blue dress is bought for the child or the baby, or a pink dress is bought for the female child. Whereas in India, if a male child is born, pedas are distributed to all the family members. And if a girl child is born, then barfi is distributed. So right from birth, the child is gendered and told certain things, and the social message is going to the child that you are a male or you are a female, right? So even when it comes to buying toys for boys, aeroplanes, guns, cricket bat, hockey bat, etc. is got. Whereas for girl child, it is usually dolls, kitchen set, etc., which is got for the female child. So gender is what society ascribes to that particular sex as a particular role, and that is what creates stereotypes. So what we are next coming to is understanding the concept of gender role and gender stereotypes. So gender role is the behavior, attitude, values, and beliefs that society ascribes or which is culturally appropriate on the basis of biological sex. And that the roles and expectations are also learned. So if, for example, in Indian culture, girls have to learn cooking, or it's a girl's job to do household chores, or girls' educational preferences, especially in rural India. Of course, now we are becoming more and more progressive, but yet this gender gap is still very, very wide, even today, in today's times. So in rural India, even education is not given a preference for girl child, whereas education is a right for the boys. Girls are married off as soon as they turn 18. They don't have a choice when it comes to choosing their partners. So all these expectations that are different for a male child and for a female child bring on different stereotypes. And these stereotypes pave way for inequality. So when it comes to gender stereotypes, I don't think you can see the stereotypes, can you? Okay. So the stereotypes are nothing but a product of a subjective perception. That is, one is a stereotype means that a child has to conform to a society where, you know, usually it is the female sex that has a lower status over the male sex. And this gender inequality paves way for various discriminations, ostracization, insults, disharmony among relationships, etc. Okay, I'll change. Now we move on to. So I want to ask you students here, how many of your homes, you know, your dad cooks? Who cooks in your house, or who manages the finances in your house? How many of the girls present here know about their bank accounts, can manage their finances really well? How many girls really engage in sports such as cricket, football? You know, that itself will tell ourselves what sort of gender stereotypes we are already accustomed to. Then, so as I mentioned, the gender stereotypes are the ones which give rise to inequality among the genders. And again, this is created by society for their convenience. So why did these gender roles come about in the first place? So if you look at evolution, then when human beings were evolving, what would happen was, as agriculture was in fact by the, you know, as a matter of fact, was invented and discovered by women. And when agriculture was discovered in the Indian society, small, you know, families got a piece of agricultural land, and they were looking after the agricultural land. But when there used to be fights among two different groups of people over that agricultural land, naturally men, being physically more strong, would defend the land, whereas women, being more nurturing in nature, would actually look after the children. And that's how gradually the gender roles started to be ascribed to men and women differently. And women also realized that for procreation they needed men, right? Without the penis inserting in the vagina, a child cannot be born. And that dependence led to the assumption that men were more powerful, and therefore that power play among men and women started. That's how it gave rise to gender inequality, and that inequality paved way for many of the problems in today's society. So what do we mean by gender equality? Gender equality means equal access. So I'm not being a feminist here, or this is again very misconstrued with feminism or sexism, but absolutely it is about equal rights. It is about equal access to everything, any sector that men and women want to have access to. It's about having equal access to, whether it's employment, whether it is finance, whether it is any education, whether it is to travel opportunities, having equal access to resources and opportunities independent of whichever gender. Not just, as we mentioned, there are many other genders. There's transgender, there's bigender, there's agender, there's gender fluidity, and there's also gender queer. So it's important that irrespective of what gender a person belongs to, that they have equal access to opportunities as well as resources. And that includes economic participation and decision making. Because often if you do not belong to the majority of the group, especially this happens with the LGBTQ IA plus community, where because they fall into a minority group, they cannot participate or they do not have opportunities for jobs in various areas or various sectors, and therefore they are, you know, pushed towards certain professions like prostitution or even begging to earn their own livelihood. So gender equality, therefore, is very, very crucial when it comes to providing these equal opportunities to all genders. It is also about valuing, you know, it's respecting different behaviors, aspirations, and needs equally. Again, because different genders can present themselves or express themselves differently, it often raises eyebrows among the so-called normal people, and it can give rise to, again, harassment of all kinds, not just sexual harassment, but even physical harassment or emotional harassment, and that can definitely be detrimental to one's mental health. So having understood about gender equality, therefore gender sensitization becomes very important. So what is gender sensitization? Gender sensitization involves changing your behavior and instilling empathy into the views that we hold about our own as well as the other gender. So it's firstly respecting who you are as a person, and it's also about being empathic, that is placing yourself in the other person's shoes and empathizing with that individual, and thereby realizing the stereotypes that you may have about the gender, and then thereby changing your behavior in order to be empathic, respectful, non-judgmental, etc. So it's very important that you're self-reflective in this process, because while growing up, these values get instilled in us, these behaviors, these attitudes about gender, about sex, about sexuality, about sexual orientation also gets instilled at a very young age, based on our family values, based on societal expectations, what media portrays. Even media portrays males as powerful. You always see in Hindi movies, it's the Bollywood hero, rescuing the female from the grasp of all the gundas, or the dacoits. And so again, there's a power play clearly that is depicted in media, and it's very important to therefore be examining our own personal attitudes and beliefs and questioning the realities. So is it really true that are women the weaker sex? Is it true that women are physically weak? Is it really true? We really need to question that and figure it out to therefore then bring about change in our behavior, and that constitutes gender sensitization. Now, having understood this, how does this gender inequality impact various aspects of our life? In fact, as you can see in the slide, it impacts all aspects of life, whether it's education, whether it's work, opportunities, healthcare, money, decision-making, independence, as you can see here. And I've already explained education. If you look at the statistics, it's really, really sad to see that large number of girl students opt out of education when it comes to higher education. Or when it comes to work industry also, the class 4 workers are usually the females, and it's usually all the professionals. So even if you see the medical field, it is predominated by men, and that's not just the case in India, even in US and UK. So the so-called progressive capitalist world also has gender inequality impacting and seeing its impacts in these various fields. So when it comes to even opportunities, even if it's simple things like going abroad and studying to do your bachelor's, I'm sure many of the girl students might resonate. Their parents telling them, no, you're too small, too young. Moreover, you're a girl and you need to be able to protect yourself first. So they are very protective, so-called patronizing families you'll find, where a girl child is patronized and told that she needs to be protected, or she needs to be not exposed to the wider world too soon. Even when it comes to healthcare, I've been reading a book on gender very recently, and it mentions that even in healthcare, for that matter, when it comes to women's health, not a lot of priority is given to women's health. Even when it comes to healthcare facilities, women's health is not taken into consideration. Again, men predominate in that particular zone. And I'm not even mentioning the other genders. So just imagine the gender in this binary concept itself, there is so much of inequality, let alone what it must be for the other genders that form the absolute minority when it comes to the population distribution. Monetary matters. How many of your moms know, what investments your dad has made, who's the property is in whose name, whether it is in the name of your dad, whether it's in the name of your mom. How many moms are working and but they know about their pay slip. Do they know, what all constitutes in their pay slip? What is their provident fund, what is there, allowances, different allowances that you get as an employee. How many of your moms know it? Do go and ask these questions when you after this session. How decision making, how many moms are allowed to make major decisions when it comes to, say, buying a property, or when it comes to choosing a particular school for the child. It is usually a male dominated society where the father is called the head of the house and all the decisions are being made by this head. How many of independence? So again, a crucial topic when it comes to your age group. How many girls have the independent decision making capacity? How many of you have the independence to choose what field you want to take, where you want to go, which pub you want to go to, where you want to hang out on weekends? How many girls as compared to boys have that freedom? And I'm not I'm not biased here, and I'm not saying that this is happening in each and every household. As I said, we are progressing, but because this is so deep rooted, I mean, we have all, it's been intergenerational, passed on, right? All these behaviors, attitudes, values have been passed from generation to generation, and therefore it's quite deep rooted, and therefore very, very difficult to uproot or think of equality even in today's 21st century world. But unfortunately, why is it harmful? The harmfulness comes from the fact that it creates space for violence, exclusion, discrimination, exploitation, as I said, insults, disregard, disrespect, even in households. Whether it's households, whether it's workplace, whether it is, any other place, it gives rise to these kind of unhealthy practices. And therefore, it's important to talk about it, to understand it, so that we, as you are the youth of today, and as youth, you need to be able to grasp these ideologies and inculcate them so that your future generations that come up do not face this, or raise your children in a very equal manner, and don't create these biases. So gender inequality, as I said, it contributes to a culture where one gender is undervalued over another. And of course, I don't mean that it's only females. And in fact, I would also say that women more or less are contributing to that gender bias as well, and gender inequality as well. And there is a lot of inequality towards men as well, where, it's often said in a stereotype that men are not emotional, or men are not allowed, men have to be strong, men cannot cry, men cannot express their emotions, men have to choose certain professions, then only it makes them manly, only men who have muscles are masculine. So all these are gender stereotypes which can create insecurities, low self-esteem among men, and it can also pave way for, again, harassment and abuse. So this kind of power imbalance can pave way for sexual harassment, abuse by superiors, colleagues, employers, peers, and between the differently valued genders. A large part of this sexual harassment is linked to gendered assertion of power. And this is what studies have and research has shown. So then what is sexual harassment? Okay. Harassment that occurs, and it can occur in any situation, whether it's workplace, educational setting, professional or social situation. It can happen in households, it can happen in public spaces. What it is uninvited, unwanted, unwelcome sexual advances and obscene remarks. Even requests for sexual favors, other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature that are, again, uninvited, unwelcome and unwanted constitute sexual harassment. Each and every word of this definition is important. It's uninvited, it's unwelcome, it's unwanted. So then that brings us to a very important concept of how do then partners decide to go ahead with a sexual relationship. Comes a very important concept of consent. So I am going to play a video here. This is an excellent video, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this.
If you're still struggling with consent, just imagine instead of initiating sex, you're making them a cup of tea. You say, "Hey, would you like a cup of tea?" And they go, "Oh my God, I would love a cup of tea, thank you." Then you know they want a cup of tea. If you say, "Hey, would you like a cup of tea?" And they're like, I'm not really sure. Then you can make them a cup of tea, or not, but be aware that they might not drink it. And if they don't drink it, then, and this is the important bit, don't make them drink it. Just because you made it doesn't mean you're entitled to watch them drink it. And if they say, "No thank you," then don't make them tea at all. Just don't make them tea. Don't make them drink tea. Don't get annoyed at them for not wanting tea. They just don't want tea, okay? They might say, "Yes, please, that's kind of you." And then when the tea arrives, they actually don't want the tea at all. Sure, that's kind of annoying as you've gone to all the effort of making the tea, but they remain under no obligation to drink the tea. They did want tea, now they don't. Some people change their mind in the time it takes to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk. And it's okay for people to change their mind, and you are still not entitled to watch them drink it. And if they are unconscious, don't make them tea. Unconscious people don't want tea, and they can't answer the question, "Do you want tea?" because they're unconscious. Okay, maybe they were conscious when you asked them if they wanted tea, and they said yes, but in the time it took you to boil the kettle or brew the tea and add the milk, they are now unconscious. You should just put the tea down, make sure the unconscious person is safe, and this is the important part again, don't make them drink the tea. They said yes then, sure, but unconscious people don't want tea. If someone said yes to tea, started drinking it, and then passed out before they'd finished it, don't keep on pouring it down their throat. Take the tea away. Make sure they are safe, because unconscious people don't want tea. Trust me on this. If someone said yes to tea around your house last Saturday, that doesn't mean they want you to make them tea all the time. They don't want you to come around to their place unexpectedly and make them tea and force them to drink it, going, "But you wanted tea last week," or to wake up to find you pouring tea down their throat going, "But you wanted tea last night." If you can understand how completely ludicrous it is to force people to have tea when they don't want tea, and you are able to understand when people don't want tea, then how hard is it to understand when it comes to sex? Whether it's tea or sex, consent is everything. And on that note, I'm going to make myself a cup of tea. If you're still...
So I hope you really appreciate it. I think that was a great metaphor, a cup of tea. So how, only when it is yes, it is consent. Anything other than yes is, in simple words, not considered as consent. So consent is ongoing. Anyone can change their mind about what they're interested in doing anytime. As mentioned, it is freely given. It is without any coercion, without any manipulation, and it's specific. So saying yes to one act doesn't mean that you've said yes to others. So saying yes to kissing doesn't mean you've said yes to sexual intercourse, for that matter. It's informed, that is, you're not deceiving or lying. So if someone says they'll use a condom and then they say they don't, there isn't full consent, okay? And it's enthusiastic. It's about wanting to do something, not feeling like you have to or should do something. All boys and girls, I want you to really pay attention to this and understand that consent is active, it's based on equal power, it's a matter of choice, and that it's a process and it requires ongoing conversation with lots of trust. Again, just because someone says yes to making out doesn't mean they want to do anything else. You can change your mind at any time. Very important for all students to know. And what is not consent, again, very explicitly explained here, is just because somebody is silent, because you're flirting, being in a relationship. Consent for one thing is not consent for everything. Dressing in sexy clothing does not mean there is consent. If you previously had bad sex, being passed out, being underage, being afraid to say. So legally, below the age of 16, you cannot give consent. Being afraid to say no, making out, going into a bedroom, maybe no, playing hard to get, all these is not consent. Okay. So now, how will you check if you are being sexually harassed? I'm going to quickly go through some questions. Are you on the receiving end of unwanted sexual advances, gestures, or propositions? Are you being offered benefits of any kind in exchange for sexual favors? Is someone leering at you? Are you being eve-teased? Is someone making derogatory remarks? Is someone displaying sexually suggestive objects or pictures, cartoons, calendars, or posters? Are you a victim of sexually tinted remarks, whistling, staring, sexually slanted and obscene jokes, jokes causing or likely to cause awkwardness or embarrassment? Are you being subjected to written communication of sexual nature that is being distributed through hard or electronic copies, which contains obscene statements, propositions, variants, invitations to get sexually involved with the distributor or any other person? Are you being threatened for retaliation after you have rejected sexual advances or have reported these sexual advances? Are you being subjected to physical conduct such as unwanted touching, assault, impeding or blocking movements? Are you a victim of forcible physical touch or physical assault or manipulation or molestation? Are you being made to watch pornography or other sexually offensive or derogatory material? Is your promotion or performance evaluation being threatened by suggestion because you have rejected a request for a date or a sexual favor? Is someone explicitly or implicitly suggesting sexual favors in return for hiring, compensation, promotion, etc. In terms of your job responsibility or work? Are you being subjected to physical confinement against your will and any other act likely to violate? So all this constitutes sexual harassment, and it's important to understand that just even gestures can be part of sexual harassment. Are you being forcefully invited to a date even though you have previously turned it down? Okay, so what can you do if you're being sexually harassed? Firstly, you know that you're not alone and you're not at fault. This is very, very important for boys and girls to know here, for all the people or all the students who've joined here, that a person who is being sexually harassed is not at fault. Know that you have a choice, that there is a legal system in place to protect you, and that it's important that you ensure that you're safe first. So seek medical help, go to a doctor. You have a health center here at SCHC, at your Arts and Commerce College. Make sure you contact the medical officer there. You communicate even to the perpetrator that you are not okay with this. You let them know that I'm not okay with what you're doing, and you also form a safety network for yourself. You contact a member of your support system, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, and you identify who are these safety resources for you. You definitely, it would be helpful to confide in someone you trust or even a mental health professional. So Akshada Shinde, who's your counselor here at SCAC, I think yesterday you had a beautiful session by her on peer pressure. So do not hesitate to contact her. Consider reporting this incidents to legal authorities. There must be a school. I'm sure Arts and Commerce College has a very good system in place where you can actually go through the committees and launch a complaint. Seek proper resources of help and do not resort to behavior that may cause you harm. Understand your state of mind and emotional condition, and definitely it's important that such a traumatic incident can affect your mental health, and therefore to use mental health resources is very important. So that, what do you do if you're witnessing harassment? Is, as a member of a community, it is likely. So this is, if you are witnessing that there is some harassment going on between two people, then what you do as a bystander also has a significant effect. If you do nothing or you choose to ignore it, it normalizes such behavior and may even encourage the perpetrator to continue acting in the same manner. But if you intervene or even so much as empathize with the victim, it actually empowers the victim to take action and to not continue feeling exploited. So therefore, why is it essential to communicate about sexual harassment? It definitely helps to work towards bridging this gender gap and end the shame, stigma and injustice which is associated with sexual harassment. Most importantly, communicating about the act so that it does not manifest the effects of trauma. As I mentioned, that such sexual abuse, sexual harassment can absolutely shatter a person's mental health, and therefore it's very, very important that communication around it happens. Not communicating about it leads to the development of frustration and a turmoil of emotional unmanageability, which can further affect your mental health. So how can we help? How can Symbiosis Center for Emotional Wellbeing help? We create a safe space for communication. So the counselors here are trained to be non-judgmental, to be dealing with you with complete respect. They understand the impacts of the traumatic incident on you. They ensure confidentiality. They offer emotional support and guidance, and they help you to devise healthy ways of coping with stress. They provide therapeutic interventions which could involve counseling, supportive psychotherapy, or any other psychotherapies. And of course, I'm there as a psychiatrist, in-house psychiatrist, who can also provide medications if required. And you can also, it's not just about getting mental health, but it's also about empowering you to take the necessary steps ahead in terms of complaints, lodging complaints, or approaching legal systems in order to get justice. So again, I want to highlight that the SKU counselor is available, Akshada is available at the campus every day between 9 and 5, and even on alternate Saturdays. I am the head of the Symbiosis Center for Emotional Wellbeing. As a psychiatrist, I overlook all the counselors' work, and if there is any medical condition, mental illness, which requires medication or psychiatric intervention, then I'm available to contact us or book an appointment with us. Reach out to us on mindhelp@siu.edu.in. I appreciate and thank each one of you for patient hearing, and with this, I come to the end of today's session. I know it wasn't interactive and I cannot take questions, but happy for you all to reach out if you have any questions about today's session, and if you would like to give us a feedback on how you felt this session was. Thank you so much, and over to Pooja ma'am again.
Thank you, Girija ma'am. So this is Sarika Vak on this side. And thank you so much, Girija ma'am, for that wonderful presentation on gender sensitization. You took us through the presentation so smoothly, making us understand the basics of gender sensitization, the stigmas around it, as well as thank you for lending us a helping hand and being so, available in campus. We had really a nice time listening to you, and hope students also enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, dear students. It is time to unwind as we move to the last leg of the Student Induction Program, with a program organized by the Art Circle of our college. It is one of the oldest clubs of the college. It is a community of clubs such as 8 Count, which is a dance club, Algorithm, the music club, the photography club titled Vision, and lastly, the Biblio Phoenix, which is a poetry club. Joining the Art Circle will enable you to participate in college and intercollegiate events, which will give you a chance to showcase your talents. The teacher in charge, Dr. Sharayu Bhakare, and her team, where we have the presidents, Bhavika Kochar and Ravindranath Pai, are elated to bring Art Circle back with a bang. I would like you all to put your hands together for your extremely talented pals. They have put in a lot of effort to put up a great virtual show today for you. To begin with, we have the graceful Ashwini, who will be performing the Ganesh Vandana. Thank you, Ashwini, for that lovely dance. Moving ahead with the next performance, we have Trisha Dingra, who will be mesmerizing us with her beautiful voice. Before that, just a small announcement, students. We have uploaded the feedback link for the day. Kindly please fill it up. Unless you will not get your certificates. Thank you.
बेकरार है बात करने को,
Thank you, Trisha. That was really mesmerizing. Moving ahead, after some melodious singing by Trisha, we have an instrumental performance by Shanav, who will soothe your ears. Thank you, Sarnav. Moving on, we have another singer, Megha Chakrabarti from TYBCom, who will leave us spellbounded. Let's have a look.
मेरे मन ये बता दे तू किस ओर चला है तू, क्या पाया नहीं तूने, क्या ढूंढ रहा है तू, जो है कहीं जो है सुनी वो बात क्या है बता मितवा, कहे धड़कने तुझसे क्या मितवा, ये खुद से तो ना दूर छिपा, गामा पानी रे नी सा गामा पदा सा धा नी धा धा पा धा पा, गामा पानी रे नी सा गामा पदा सा धा नी धा नी धा नी धा नी पा धा गामा पदा नी धा नी धा मा गा मितवा, जीवन डगर में प्रेम नगर में आया नजर में जब से कोई है, तू सोचता है तू पूछता है, जिसकी कमी थी क्या ये वही है, हाँ ये वही है, हाँ ये वही है, तू एक प्यासा ये नदी है, काहे नहीं इसको तू खुल के बताए, जो है कही जो है सुनी वो बात क्या है बता मितवा, कहे धड़कने तुझसे क्या मितवा, ये खुद से तो ना दूर छिपा, मेरे मन ये बता दे तू किस ओर चला है तू, क्या पाया नहीं तूने, क्या ढूंढ रहा है तू।
Thank you, Megha. We now move ahead with another performance by Neha Soni. Thank you, Neha. Next, we have Kavya Narayan from TYBCom performing for us. Thank you, Kavya. That was really wonderful. After such a wonderful singers, we now have a medley of dancers by our talented dances put up by our talented students. We have with us Abhishek Jaibai from TYBCom, followed by Vaibhav from TYBCom. Then we have Bhushan from SYBCom, Anvita performing from SYBCom, and we have Ranjana from SYBCom.
चले आते हो हर रोज इन ख्वाबों में चुपके से आ भी जाओ एक दिन मेरी बाहों में तेरे ही सपने अंधेरों में उजालों में कोई नशा है तेरी आंखों के प्यालों में तू मेरे ख्वाबों में जवाबों में सवालों में हर दिन चुरा तुम्हें मैं लाता हूँ ख्यालों में मुझे प्यार है कैसा खुमार है यार सोनी ने तंग जद तकिया तू चैन मेरा लिया बिल्लो खो रग रग विच खून वंग वगदी है धड़कन कर की वसलो दिल विच नी तू तक तक करदी चोरा वांग ठगदी है तू कच्चे दारू वांग सिर नु तू चढ़दी सोनी नी लगदी तू अख में सोनिए जद दी तेरे नाल आई आई गया सब कुछ लुट चनिए तेरे बिना भी कोई होर न दिल च आई कर गई तू बलिए कुड़ी ऐनी तेरी वाइब मैनू खिच तेरे नेड़े लावा तेरे नी मैं केड़े जद कर दी तू वाइब मुंडा करदा ना लाई कुड़ी ऐनी तेरी वाइब किसा मैनू नी तबाह होया फिर दस दाई तेरी वाइब बैठा दिल च बसाई
Thank you, dear students. Wonderful, wonderful performance. Last but not the least, we have Shrutika Kumbar from TYBCom who will be performing for us. Thank you, Shrutika. We are sure you all must have enjoyed the performances as much as we did. And now I would like to invite Dr. Sharayu Bhakare, in charge of Deeksharambh Committee, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Sarika. Good afternoon to one and all present online for the Student Induction Program, Deeksharambh. On behalf of the Symbiosis College of Arts and Commerce, it is my privilege to propose a vote of thanks as a concluding responsibility of Deeksharambh, the 6-day Student Induction Program organized under the UGC Guidelines for the first year BA and BCom students. The Student Induction Program has provided our newly admitted students with an overview of college programs, facilities, and activities. Care was taken to also organize insightful sessions such as skills needed post-pandemic, being a responsible citizen, peer pressure, and gender sensitization. We hope that these sessions will help our students in easing life in college and thereafter. Organizing Deeksharambh, the 6-day student induction program virtually, was entirely a team effort. On behalf of my team, I wish to acknowledge the contribution of all those who made this program possible. First and foremost, we are grateful to our college principal, Dr. Rishikesh Soman, and Vice Principal, Dr. Tessie Tharathil, for their unstinted support and guidance in planning and executing this program. They both indeed have been our pillars of strength. On behalf of the college, my sincere acknowledgement to our guest speakers, Dr. Vivek Sane, Dr. Shirish Limay, Head of Symbiosis Center for Emotional Wellbeing, Dr. Girija Mahale, and our alumni, Abhinandan Sawant and Nimisha Dev. We appreciate the efforts taken by our talented students of Art Circle in showcasing an excellent cultural performance virtually. Our sincere gratitude to all the teacher presenters, namely for day 1, Dr. Zakira Sheikh and Dr. Hilda David, day 2, Dr. Nilufar Raina and Mrs. Monica Parikh, day 3, Dr. Yogini Chipunkar and Mrs. Ashwini Kothari, day 4, Dr. Santosh Marwadi Kumbhar and Mr. Anirudh Sharma, day 5, Dr. Nilesh Wagmare and our college counselor, Ms. Akshada Shinde. We also thank our college IQAC coordinator, Dr. Anil Adagale, for his significant guidance. My sincere thanks to our college registrar, Mrs. Gandhali Parurekar, librarian, Mrs. Vaishali Vaidya, and our office staff for their contribution in making this program a success. This virtual online program, which has connected students from all over India and also abroad, would not have been possible without our expert technical team at the back end, Mr. Nazir Sayyed and Mr. Nitin Hisse. Many thanks to Chive Kaka, Zoshi Kaka and Sauri Kaka for their help in the AV hall from where the organizing team operated. I earnestly acknowledge the efforts of the Deeksharambh Committee members, Mrs. Sarika Wagh, Mrs. Alka Arora, Ms. Tejaswini Shevate, Ms. Vivi Karla and Ms. Pooja Prabhavalkar. For 6 days, this team has worked relentlessly for the smooth execution of this student induction program. Last but not the least, thank you very much to all the students for choosing Symbiosis College of Arts and Commerce as your learning destination. We all here in Pune eagerly look forward for your vibrant presence in the classrooms and on the campus. See you soon, students. Thank you.